Ever been in a situation where you felt like, I don't know, you were playing a really high-stakes game and you just wished you had the insights of a master strategist, someone to guide your moves?
Definitely. And today we're diving into exactly that, exploring the strategic mind of someone often called the god of strategy, Lord Krishna.
Exactly. A figure who's, well, incredibly multifaceted. His story runs through core Hindu scriptures, showing him not just as a god, but as this fascinating study in leadership, strategy.
Right, from his charming childhood antics all the way to his profound philosophical teachings. He's presented in so many ways.
Absolutely. We're talking Lord Krishna, the eighth avatar of Vishnu, sometimes even seen as the supreme being himself.
Hmm?
The enchanting lover, the brave warrior, the sharp diplomat, the wise guide.
But for this deep dive, we're focusing in, aren't we?
Yes, precisely. Our mission today is really specific, to dissect his strategies. The actions he took, as they're shown in key texts like the Mahabharata, which is just massive, by the way, the Bhagavata Purana, Harivamsha, and the Vishnu Purana.
Our goal isn't just to retell the stories, which many might know. It's to really get into the how and the why behind Krishna's strategic thinking. How did he execute these plans? What were the outcomes? And what principles were driving his choices?
Think of this as like a shortcut to understanding some really key strategic concepts. We're going to highlight those aha moments, maybe reveal some surprising angles on his approach, and hopefully keep it engaging without being overwhelming.
Sounds good.
So, ready to explore the strategic mind of Lord Krishna? Let's get started.
Okay, our first strategic idea might sound a bit counterintuitive. It's strategic silence.
Silence is a strategy. Interesting.
Yeah, it's not just about keeping quiet. It's about deliberately choosing not to intervene or speaking only when it's absolutely necessary, letting things play out to reveal what's really going on.
Okay, I need an example. How does this work in practice?
Well, a really powerful one comes from the Mahabharata, specifically the Sabha Parva, the infamous dice game in Hastinapur.
Ah, yes, where Yudhishthira gambles everything away.
Everything, including Draupadi, the shared wife of the Pandava brothers. And it gets truly horrific when she's dragged into the court, and Duryodhana actually orders her to be disrobed, a completely degrading moment.
And where's Krishna in all this? What's his role? Or lack of one?
That's the key point. His initial absence, or at least his lack of immediate direct intervention, is really striking. Now, popular stories often tell of Draupadi praying and Krishna miraculously providing an endless sari to save her honor.
Right, I know that version.
But interestingly, the critical edition of the Mahabharata, well, it describes the miracle happening, but it doesn't explicitly tie it to Krishna responding at that exact moment because of her prayer. The timing is, let's say, ambiguous in that version.
So this strategic silence, this delay,
Hmm.
what was the effect of him not jumping in immediately?
Well, looking at the bigger picture, his delayed action, or maybe even his apparent absence right then, it allowed the full horror of the Kauravas' actions, their dharma, their unrighteousness, to be completely exposed.
And it wasn't just the Kauravas doing wrong, was it?
No, absolutely not. It also highlighted the complicity of the respected elders in the court, like Bhishma and Drona. Their silence, their failure to intervene when Draupadi herself was questioning the legality of being staked after Yudhishthira lost himself, it was damning. Even Vikarna, a Kaurava brother, protested, showing the clear violation of Dharma.
So the inaction, in a way, spoke volumes.
Hmm.
What were the consequences that flowed from this awful event, amplified by Krishna's initial silence?
It was a massive turning point. It directly fueled the flames for the eventual Kurukshetra war. Bhima makes his terrifying vow right then and there to break Duryodhana's tie and drink Dushasana's blood in revenge.
A powerful motivator.
Definitely. And exposing the Kauravas' dharma so publicly gave the Pandavas the clear moral justification they needed later. Some interpretations, if they do link the miracle to Krishna, connect its timing to the idea of bhakti, that divine grace comes only after total surrender. And, it's worth noting scholars still debate the exact details and even the authenticity of the disrobing incident as it's passed down.
It really makes you think. What are your thoughts on this, listening in? The power of silence in a really critical moment. Have you ever seen a situation where holding back, not acting right away, actually revealed more than jumping in would have? Let us know your experiences in the comments.
Right, so from silence, we move to almost the opposite. Strategy number 2, diplomatic persuasion. This is all about prioritizing peaceful negotiation, trying absolutely everything before resorting to conflict.
Okay, and the classic example here is Krishna's peace mission to the Kaurava court, right?
Yeah.
Before the war.
Exactly. It's detailed in the Udyoga Parva of the Mahabharata. This happens after the Pandavas have finished their long exile, 13 years in the forest and in disguise. They have fulfilled their side of the bargain.
And Krishna insists on going even though some people, like Yudhishthira, were skeptical it would work.
Yes, that's quite telling. Yudhishthira warns him about Duryodhana's nature, basically saying he's inherently deceitful. But Krishna understands the sheer devastation a war would cause. He feels it's his duty to make one last genuine attempt at peace. His first move upon arriving is also strategic, choosing to stay with the Buddha, who's known for his righteousness.
Instead of accepting the fancy welcome from the Kauravas, sending a message right away.
Precisely. It signals his disapproval before he even enters the court.
So what arguments does he make in the assembly? How does he try to persuade them?
Oh, it's a masterclass in diplomacy. He gives this incredibly eloquent plea. He emphasizes the Pandavas' legitimate rights based on the agreement. He reminds them of their shared bloodline, the Kuru lineage. He vividly paints a picture of the destruction war would bring to everyone, emphasizing the loss of life, the grief.
And the terms he proposes.
He starts reasonably, asking for half the kingdom back, as was originally agreed. But then, showing his absolute commitment to peace, he dramatically reduces the demand. He says just give them 5 villages, 5 simple villages, anything to prevent the catastrophic war.
5 villages. That seems incredibly minimal. How does Duryodhana react to this? To reason? To compromise?
Predictably, perhaps. Fueled by his arrogance, egged on by advisors like Karna and Shakuni, he flatly refuses. He delivers that infamous line he wouldn't give the Pandavas enough land to even cover the point of a needle.
Not even a needle point. Wow.
It gets worse. He actually plots to capture Krishna, the peace envoy. That's when Krishna reveals his Vishwarupam, his terrifying, awe-inspiring universal form, a display of immense cosmic power, really meant to show the futility of opposing divine will.
And did that work? Did seeing this cosmic form change Duryodhana's mind?
Shockingly, no. Even that incredible revelation doesn't break through Duryodhana's hardened pride and determination. The peace mission fails. War becomes inevitable.
So a failed mission. But strategically, what did it achieve, even in failure?
This is crucial. By exhausting every possible avenue for peace, Krishna ensures the Pandavas have the undeniable moral high ground. His sincere efforts, contrasted with Duryodhana's absolute refusal to compromise, even on the smallest point, clearly puts the blame for the coming war on Duryodhana and his Dharma.
Which would be important for alliances and their own morale.
Absolutely vital. It legitimizes their cause. They didn't want war. They were forced into it by sheer injustice.
Thinking about this, how important do you believe it is in any conflict, big or small, to really exhaust all diplomatic options first, before taking more drastic steps? And what actually makes a negotiation effective in your experience? We'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay, our third strategy takes us into a different realm, psychological insight. This is about really understanding people, their emotions, what motivating them, their mental state, and using that understanding to guide actions effectively.
And the ultimate example of this has to be the Bhagavad Gita, right? Delivered right there on the battlefield.
Without a doubt. It's in the Bhishma Parva. The scene is set. Kurukshetra, battlefield, armies arrayed. Arjuna asks Krishna, his charioteer, to position the chariot between the two forces. And when he sees his own family, his uncles, teachers, cousins ready to fight and die, he just breaks down.
He's overcome with grief, confusion about his duty, drops his famous Gandiva bow. Total despair.
And what's amazing is Krishna's immediate grasp of the situation. He sees right through to the core of Arjuna's crisis. He identifies the moha, the deep attachment Arjuna feels for his relatives. He sees the papa, the fear of sinning by killing them, and the fundamental confusion about his dharma, his duty as a Kshatriya warrior.
So Krishna doesn't just say, hey, pick up your bow, let's fight. It's much deeper.
Much, much deeper. The Bhagavad Gita isn't a battlefield pep talk. It's this profound, systematic, philosophical discourse perfectly tailored to Arjuna's specific state of mind. Krishna explains the nature of reality, the eternal soul or Atman that can't be killed. He stresses the importance of svatdharma, fulfilling one's own sacred duty.
And the concept of action without attachment.
Yes, nishkama karma. Acting selflessly without being fixated on results. He also outlines the path of bhakti, loving devotion, as a way to connect with the divine. And then, mirroring the peace mission, he again reveals his Vishwarupam, giving Arjuna that cosmic perspective to understand his role in the grand scheme.
What's the impact on Arjuna? Does it work?
It's transformative. Arjuna famously declares, Nashtumoha, my delusion is destroyed. I have regained my memory of my duty. I shall act according to your word. He picks up his bow, his confusion resolved, ready to fight.
Wow. And beyond just Arjuna, the Gita itself.
It becomes one of the most revered scriptures in Hinduism, offering timeless wisdom for people everywhere for millennia on how to navigate life's complexities, duty, action, and spirituality.
What's really striking, connecting this back, is how Krishna engages directly with Arjuna's emotions and doubts. He doesn't dismiss them. He diagnoses the root causes accurately and provides this relevant philosophical framework, karma, jnana, bhakti, empowering Arjuna through understanding, through enlightenment, not just by ordering him around.
Absolutely. It's leadership through deep psychological understanding. Which leads to a question for everyone listening. Can you think of a time when really understanding someone's hidden motivations or fears totally changed how you dealt with a situation? How crucial is that kind of emotional intelligence in leadership or even just in daily interactions? Let us know. All right, strategy number 4. This one might feel a bit more edgy. We're talking about disguise and deception, or maybe better put, justified trickery. Using deceptive means when necessary to uphold Dharma against opponents who are themselves fundamentally unrighteous.
Okay, justified trickery. Where do we see this play out?
A really stark example is the final duel between Arjuna and Karna. It's the 17th day of the war, detailed in the Karna Parva, a hugely anticipated clash. But Karna, despite being an incredible warrior, faces a string of bad luck curses coming home to roost.
Right, his chariot wheel gets stuck in the mud.
Exactly. And worse, due to a past curse from his teacher Parashurama, he forgets the incantation for his most powerful weapon, the Brahmastra, right when he needs it most. He's vulnerable, trying to free his chariot, and he actually appeals to Arjuna, citing the rules of Dharmayuddha righteous warfare, saying you don't attack a warrior in distress.
A legitimate appeal under normal circumstances? But what does Krishna do?
Krishna's response is immediate and ruthless. He tells Arjuna forcefully, kill him now, don't hesitate.
Wow. He overrides the rules of engagement. How does he justify that?
He lays it out very clearly. He reminds Arjuna of Karna's own past actions that violated Dharma, specifically Karna's active participation in the public humiliation of Draupadi, egging on Dushasana, and crucially his involvement in the unethical group killing of Arjuna's young heroic son Abhimanyu earlier in the war.
Abhimanyu's death. That was brutal.
Incredibly brutal. Krishna's argument is essentially, Karna, through his own consistent adharma, has forfeited any right to now claim protection under the rules of Dharma when it suits him. He lived outside the rules, so he dies outside them.
And the outcome? Arjuna listens.
He does. Fueled by Krishna's words, perhaps remembering his son's death, Arjuna uses the powerful Anjalikastra arrow and kills Karna while he's helpless. It's a massive turning point. Karna's death shatters the Kauravas' morale and basically seals their fate.
But ethically, this is one of the most debated moments, isn't it? Attacking an incapacitated opponent seems like a clear violation of the warrior code, the Kshatriya Dharma.
It absolutely is on the surface, but Krishna's justification points to a deeper, more contextual ethic. When you're facing an enemy who represents fundamental adharma, who consistently bends or breaks rules for their own gain, does sticking rigidly to the letter of the law actually serve the greater good of Dharma? Or does it become counterproductive?
So, the spirit of Dharma over the letter.
That's the argument. The ultimate goal is upholding cosmic order. And sometimes, tragically, that might require actions that seem transgressive in isolation, especially when dealing with those who've shown no regard for principles themselves. The fact that Karna's death also coincides with the fruition of several past curses adds another layer, suggesting a kind of karmic inevitability, too.
It's definitely complex.
Yeah.
Which leads to a tough question for you listening. Do you think there are situations where bending the rules or even using deception can be ethically justified for a greater good? Where do you draw that line? And what are the dangers of going down that path? We'd be interested in your perspectives.
Okay, strategy number 5 takes us into the realm of political strategy. Divide and rule. Pretty self-explanatory, weakening your opponents by isolating them, breaking their alliances, creating friction between them.
And where do we see Krishna employing this?
A key example revolves around the powerful king Jarasandha of Magadha. This is mainly in the Sabha and related stories in the Puranas. The Pandavas wanted to perform the Rajasuya Yagna, a major ceremony establishing imperial sovereignty, but Jarasandha was a huge obstacle. He was incredibly powerful and had actually imprisoned many other kings.
So they needed to remove him first. How did they approach it?
Krishna, Bhima, and Arjuna went to Magadha disguised as Brahmins. They challenged Jarasandha, who, being a warrior, chose to duel Bhima in wrestling, as they were matched in might.
And this leads to that famous duel where Krishna gives Bhima a hint.
Yes, the duel goes on for days, seemingly endless, because Jarasandha had this unique ability he could rejoin his body if split. Bhima is struggling. Krishna, seeing this, subtly picks up a twig, tears it in half, and throws the pieces in opposite directions. Bhima gets the hint, and next time he manages to tear Jarasandha apart, he throws the halves away from each other, finally killing him.
So that's exploiting a weakness. But where does the divide and rule part come in beyond this duel?
That's a great point. While the climax is that duel, the texts hint at a longer game Krishna played against Jarasandha earlier, back when Krishna ruled Mathura and faced repeated attacks from him. The scriptures mention Krishna employing strategies that included, I quote loosely, creating dissensions among them, meaning Jarasandha's allies.
Ah, so sowing discord among Jarasandha's supporters before this final confrontation, weakening his power base over time.
Exactly. So the final elimination wasn't just about the duel. It was the culmination of a longer strategy that included weakening Jarasandha's alliances. It wasn't just brute force, it was strategic isolation too.
And the consequences of finally defeating Jarasandha.
Huge. Firstly, it removed the main obstacle to the Pandavas' Rajasuya Yagna, allowing them to establish Yudhishthir's authority. Secondly, freeing all those kings Jarasandha had imprisoned instantly created a large group of grateful new allies for the Pandavas, a major shift in the balance of power.
So looking at the whole picture, the strategy against Jarasandha involved disguise, infiltration, psychological insight in choosing Bhima, tactical intervention with the signal, and this earlier, less obvious element of dividing his allies. All presented as necessary steps to remove a tyrant and uphold Dharma.
Right. Jarasandha was often portrayed quite negatively, involved in things like human sacrifice, so his removal fits the narrative of restoring righteousness. Which brings up a question. How effective do you find the divide and rule strategy in different areas, politics, business, maybe even personal dynamics? And what are the ethical lines there? When does it become manipulation? Share your views. All right, strategy number 6 offers a really interesting model of leadership, empowerment over intervention. The idea here is not to solve problems for others, but to enable them to achieve the victory themselves.
And the classic example is Krishna's role in the Kurukshetra war itself, particularly that choice he offered beforehand.
Precisely. This is covered in the Udyoga and Bhishma Parvas. Right before the war, Krishna goes to both sides, Pandavas and Kauravas, and makes this incredible offer. He says, you can either have my entire formidable Narayani Sena army fight for you,
Or you can have me personally on your side, but I won't fight. I'll be unarmed.
exactly. A stark choice. Duryodhana, thinking practically perhaps, immediately chooses the massive army. But Arjuna, representing the Pandavas, makes the profound choice. He chooses Krishna himself.
A choice for wisdom over might. And Krishna sticks to his word.
He does. Throughout the entire 18-day war, he serves as Arjuna's charioteer Parthasarathi. He provides invaluable counsel, he delivers the Bhagavad Gita, he motivates Arjuna when he falters, he offers brilliant strategic advice, but he rarely, if ever, wields a weapon in direct combat. There are a couple of instances where he makes a threatening move, like advancing towards Bhishma with his discus, but it's more psychological warfare to shake things up or fulfill a specific purpose. His core contribution is guidance, not fighting.
So by deliberately taking this non-combatant supporting role, what's the strategic outcome?
It allows Arjuna to step up and become the central hero of the Pandava victory. Krishna empowers him, guides him, gives him the tools and the mindset, but Arjuna has to do the fighting. The victory becomes Arjuna's, and by extension, the Pandavas'. It powerfully shows that Krishna's wisdom and strategic presence were ultimately more valuable than his entire army.
It sets up this model of divine help working through human effort, doesn't it?
Exactly. It's leadership through empowerment. He guides, he enables, but he respects their agency. They have to fight their own battle for Dharma. The restoration of order becomes a human achievement, albeit one that's divinely inspired and supported. It ties into concepts like Leela the Divine, participating in relatable ways, and the purpose of an avatar being to guide and restore Dharma through inspiration, not just by divine fiat. That choice itself highlights wisdom over brute force.
It really makes you think about leadership styles. Have you ever found that empowering others, letting them find their own solutions, actually leads to better, more lasting results than just stepping in and fixing it yourself? What do you think are the key ingredients for truly empowering others? Let us know your experiences.
Okay, strategy number 7 is all about timing mastery. Knowing precisely when to act, not too soon, not too late, but hitting that perfect moment for maximum impact.
And the Rajasuya Yagna comes up again here, doesn't it? with Shishupal.
Yes, absolutely. Also in the Sabbaparva. During the ceremony, the question arises of who should receive the first honor, the Arga. On the wise Bhishma's counsel, it's offered to Krishna, but this infuriates Shishupala.
Who was Krishna's cousin, right?
I-
And held some kind of grudge.
Yes, related but deeply envious and resentful, partly over Krishna marrying Rukmini, whom Shishupala had wanted. So Shishupala stands up and just unleashes this torrent of abuse, insulting Krishna, insulting Bhishma, insulting King Yudhishthira. He completely disrupts the sacred ceremony.
And Krishna's reaction.
This is where the timing mastery is just incredible. Krishna remains perfectly calm, remarkably patient. He just sits there silently while Shishupala keeps hurling insults, getting more and more outrageous. But the scriptures tell us Krishna is mentally counting these insults.
Counting them. Why?
Because of a promise he'd made long ago to Shishupala's mother, his own aunt. He had promised her he would forgive her son for 100 offenses. So he patiently waits, letting Shishupala condemn himself publicly until he crosses that exact threshold, the 101st offense.
And then the patience runs out.
Instantly. The moment Shishupala hits 101, Krishna stands up. He calmly recounts Shishupala's long list of past crimes and transgressions, kidnapping, arson, treason. And then, without further delay, he summons his Sudarshana chakra, his divine discus, and beheads Shishupala right there in the assembly. Swift, decisive, final.
Wow. Talk about a shift from patience to action. What were the consequences?
Well, firstly, the disruption ended immediately. The Agana could proceed successfully. Secondly, it was a powerful public demonstration of Krishna's adherence to his word. He kept his promise to forgive 100 offenses, but no more. And it showed his absolute power to uphold Dharma and deal with those who flagrantly disrespect it. Everyone present witnessed the immediate consequence of extreme arrogance.
And there's a theological layer, too, isn't there, about Shishupala's liberation?
Yes, some interpretations see this as Shishupala's final release. He's considered the third and final birth of Jaya, one of Vishnu's gatekeepers, cursed to be born as an enemy of the Lord before achieving salvation. So his death, paradoxically, is his liberation.
Looking at it strategically, though, it's a perfect example of timing. The patience wasn't weakness, it was strategic. It let Shishupala expose himself fully. Acting at precisely the 101st offense made the response seem like just desserts. The fulfillment of a known promise, not just personal anger. Divine tolerance has limits, and justice, when it comes, is swift.
Exactly. It upheld Krishna's Dharma while delivering karmic justice. So, a question for everyone. How critical is timing in your own big decisions? Can you think of a time when waiting for just the right moment, resisting the urge to act sooner, made all the difference? Share your stories. All right, strategy number 8 shifts focus again. This one is about visionary sacrifice, being willing to give up something significant, maybe even cherished, for a larger long-term goal, usually tied to protecting people or upholding Dharma.
Sacrifice for the greater good. Where do we see this demonstrated?
A major example is the decision regarding Mathura, Krishna's ancestral city. This comes after Krishna has killed the tyrannical king Kamsa. Kamsa's father-in-law is the same Jarasandha we discussed earlier.
Ah, Jarasandha again. He didn't take Kamsa's death well, I imagine.
Not at all. Enraged, Jarasandha, along with his allies, launches repeated attacks on Mathura. The sources like the Harivamsha and Bhagavata Purana mention maybe 17 or even 18 massive invasions. The Yadavas, Krishna's people, defend bravely each time, but the constant warfare causes immense suffering and hardship. It's unsustainable.
So Krishna realizes they can't just keep defending Mathura indefinitely.
Exactly. He sees the long-term picture. Defending Mathura is draining their resources and causing pain to his people. So he makes this incredibly bold, visionary decision. He decides to prioritize the safety and future of the Yadavas over their attachment to their historical home.
What does he do?
He commissions the divine architect, Vishvakarma, to build a new, impregnable city called Dwaraka, strategically located on the coast, far away. And then, using his divine powers, he miraculously transports the entire population of Mathura overnight to this new city.
A whole population.
Overnight. That's the story. So when Jarasandha launches his next attack, maybe the 18th one, he finds Mathura completely empty, deserted. In his fury, he burns the empty city. But the Yadavas are already safe and sound in Dwaraka.
That's a huge sacrifice, giving up your capital city, your home. But it ensured their survival.
Precisely. The Yadavas thrived in Dwaraka, safe from Jarasandha's attacks. It allowed them to consolidate their strength for future events, including the Kurukshetra War. It's a powerful example of pragmatic leadership, putting the well-being of the people, prajarashana, above sentimentality or attachment to territory.
So connecting this to strategy, it's about foresight. Seeing the need for a difficult sacrifice now for long-term stability and the greater good.
Absolutely. Abandoning your capital is a massive decision. It shows incredible long-term vision, a degree of non-attachment, and a deep commitment to welfare. It preserved the Adapa clan, who were crucial allies of Dharma, allowing them to play their part later.
It's a profound choice. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to make a really significant sacrifice, maybe time, money, comfort, even a place for what you believed was a crucial long-term benefit? What factors guided that decision? We'd be interested to hear.
Okay, strategy number 9 brings us back to the battlefield, focusing on tactical execution, exploiting weaknesses or maybe tactical targeting, identifying and striking at an opponent's specific vulnerability when it's necessary for a righteous win.
And this sounds like it relates to the final duel between Bhima and Duryodhana.
Exactly. The very end of the war, the 18th day, Shalyaparva. After everyone else is defeated, Duryodhana emerges. There's an offer for a final one-on-one duel to decide the outcome. Duryodhana chooses Bhima, as they were both trained in mace fighting by Balarama and were considered equals.
But Duryodhana had an advantage, didn't he? Some kind of invulnerability.
Yes, granted by his mother Gandhari. His entire body, except for his thighs or groin area, was supposed to be as hard as iron, virtually invulnerable to attack. Plus, there was a pre-existing curse from the sage Maitreya that Bhima would one day break Duryodhana's ties.
So the duel begins. How does it go?
It's brutal, a long, exhausting mace fight. And despite Bhima's incredible strength, Duryodhana, perhaps because of his invulnerability and skill, starts to gain the upper hand. Bhima is tiring. It looks like Duryodhana might actually win.
And Krishna steps in again.
He recognizes the situation. He knows Duryodhana likely can't be beaten by conventional mace blows due to his protection. He sees Bhima struggling. So he gives Bhima a signal, accounts very slightly. Maybe he slaps his own tie meaningfully, maybe he prompts Arjuna to signal Bhima, or maybe signals Bhima directly. But the message is clear. Remember the thighs, remember Duryodhana's vulnerability, remember your vow.
The vow Bhima made during Draupadi's humiliation to break Duryodhana's tie.
Exactly. Bhima gets the message. Mustering his strength, recalling his vow, he delivers a massive blow with his mace directly to Duryodhana's thighs.
Which shatters them.
Yeah.
But wasn't that against the rules of mace fighting, hitting below the belt?
It absolutely was. A clear violation of the established rules of Gada Yuddha. Duryodhana cries out in agony and outrage. Even Balarama, their teacher who arrives at that moment, is furious at Bhima for the foul play.
How does Krishna justify this? It seems like another instance of bending the rules.
He does, forcefully. He confronts Balarama and justifies Bhima's action. Again, he points to Duryodhana's entire life of Dharma, his treachery, his cruelty, his role in Draupadi's humiliation, the rigged dice game, everything. Krishna argues that someone who consistently disregarded Dharma and fairness forfeited the right to expect his opponent to adhere strictly to the rules, especially when the fate of Dharma itself hung in the balance.
So the ends justify the means, essentially, against such an opponent.
That's the core argument presented. Duryodhana's defeat was necessary for the Pandavas' victory and the reestablishment of Dharma. The blow also fulfilled Bhima's powerful vow and Maitreya's curse. It's another stark example of the spirit of Dharma potentially overriding the letter of the law when facing deep-seated unrighteousness.
This raises another practical question, maybe for competitive environments. How important is it to identify and, well, exploit your opponent's weaknesses, whether in business, sports, or elsewhere? What are the ethical lines you draw? When does smart strategy become unfair play? Let us know your take.
Okay, our 10th and final strategy for today takes us somewhere completely different. Away from war and politics, back to Krishna's childhood. Playful wisdom, or Leela, using that irresistible youthful innocence and playful spirit to teach deep spiritual truths and, maybe most importantly, foster devotion.
Ah, the butter thief stories. Makhan Chor. These are probably some of the most beloved tales about Krishna.
They really are. Found beautifully in the Bhagavata Purana and Harivamsha. We hear about his childhood in Vrindavan, how he and his little friends would team up, form human pyramids to steal pots of butter and yogurt that the gopis, the cowherd women, had hung up high.
And the gopis would complain to his foster mother, Yashoda.
Constantly. But always with affection mixed with exasperation. Yashoda would sometimes try to discipline him, like in the famous Damodara Leela, where she tries to tie him to a heavy grinding mortar, but the rope mysteriously is always just a little too short until she adds her own effort with love. But mostly, Krishna would just disarm everyone with his charm and playful denials.
So how is this play actually a strategy or wisdom?
Well, in the Bhakti traditions, these acts aren't seen as just random mischief. They're understood as divine, Leela joyful, spontaneous play that serves multiple purposes. It delights his devotees, draws them into a loving, intimate relationship with him. His innocence and charm are key parts of this divine play.
And the outcome was people loved him more for it.
Exactly. Instead of making him dislike these playful antics, especially the butter stealing, deeply endeared him to everyone in Vrindavan, particularly the gopis. It fostered this incredibly intense, personal, loving devotion, prema bhakti, or madhurya rasa, seeing the divine as one's beloved. These stories became absolutely central to bhakti movements, inspiring art, poetry, music, dance for centuries.
Is there a deeper symbolic meaning attributed to the butter itself?
Oh, absolutely. Butter, being the pure, refined essence of milk, is often seen as symbolizing the devotee's purified heart, full of pure love, or prema. Krishna stealing this butter is interpreted as the divine actively seeking out and delighting in the pure, selfless love of the devotee's heart. He desires that love.
Stealing hearts, literally and figuratively.
You could say that. And the lightness of butter can symbolize detachment. So through these utterly charming, lighthearted stories, Krishna conveys profound truths about the nature of devotion, the importance of a pure heart, the need for detachment from the material, and crucially, the possibility of a joyful, loving, intimate relationship with the divine. It makes complex theology feel accessible and deeply personal through play.
It's a lovely way to think about it. Have you ever had an experience where you learned something really important, maybe a deep lesson, through something that seemed completely lighthearted or playful at the time? How can that sense of humor and joy help us understand things better, connect more deeply, share your playful wisdom? So wrapping up this deep dive, we've covered a lot of ground 10 really distinct strategies from the life of Lord Krishna. It reveals, I think, a very complex, very nuanced approach to leadership and action, all seemingly driven by this core goal of upholding Dharma, cosmic order.
Definitely. And understanding these different strategies, silence, diplomacy, psychology, sometimes trickery, empowerment, timing, sacrifice, exploiting weakness, even playful wisdom. It offers really valuable insights for navigating our own complex lives, doesn't it?
I think so. It touches on the need for long-term vision, the tricky nature of ethics and context, the power of really understanding people.
And adapting your approach to the specific situation and the nature of the challenge, or even the opponent you're facing.
Which leads us to a final thought, something for you to mull over. Given the complexity and sometimes the apparent contradictions in Krishna's strategies, how do you personally try to find that balance in your own life? The balance between sticking firmly to your principles and the need for pragmatic, decisive, sometimes maybe even unconventional action to achieve a worthy goal.
That's a great question to ponder. And if you enjoyed this discussion and want more deep dives into fascinating topics like this one, please do like this video, share it with others who might be interested, and subscribe to the Wiz Vibes YouTube channel.
Your support really helps us continue bringing these kinds of explorations to you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.